Okay, we've got No Money here, technician, and we're going to show you today how to remove and replace an inner tie rod. So we've got the wheel off, and we're working on a late model Ford Taurus, which is real common for the inner tie rods to go bad. And so what we have here is the outer tie rod right here and the inner tie rod, and this is the piece we're replacing today because it's bad. It's got played in the joint inside right there. So our technician here is about to remove the tie rod, the outer tie rod. You have to remove the outer tie rod to remove the inner tie rod. So,
okay, well, I've already taken the cotter key off and I've loosened it, made it easy for us. Now there's two ways of moving the outer tie rod. A lot of people like to strike it with the hammer. Strike it a few times right here. That'll loosen up the tie rod. Or you can get a tool. Here's a tool. It clamps on. Usually it takes a wrench. I've already loosened it. Take a wrench. It'll push it up. Prevents any damage. Okay, so we're gonna take the tie rod off. Now, if you happen to have a tool, I like to measure the distance of this inner nut so I can put it back the same way. Makes the alignments go a little bit quicker. Of course, not many people are going to have this. I just have a way of measuring it so I can put the nut back nice and straight.
now you remove the nut there.
You have to reuse that nut. This tie rod takes a clip. I actually have already taken it off. Fits on here. Use some type of pliers. Squeeze it together.
Yeah.
Get the clip off. This here bellows boot, I like to lube them up a little bit. They'll come off a little bit easier. I just stick a screwdriver in here, a little bit of spray.
That's a nice little trick.
It just comes off a lot easier. Next, this bellows boot is clamped. There's a clamp. Have to have a nice long screwdriver. There's a clamp. I'm just going to use the screwdriver to loosen this clamp a little bit. And it's just a matter of pulling the bellows boot off.
There's the bellows boot, what they call a bellows boot. It's basically just a dust boot. That's all it does, is keep dust off of that joint right there. So you're looking at this right here is the inner tie rod joint, and that right down there is the rack.
To get the tie rod off, there's various tools. This one is a common tool. This piece, the crow's foot, comes in different sizes.
Yeah, the distance here is different, and you have to size them and figure out which one you need.
Usually there's 4 sizes. This tool came with 4. Fits on the inside part, and there's a slot.
Let me get it here.
The crow's foot fits in the slot on this tool. Little whack.
Right off of there.
Okay, we have one inner tie rod off.
And this is the joint that goes bad. A lot of times you see dried up grease in there. It's not real wet. And it's like a ball joint basically, like your shoulder or your hip. and your outer tie rod screws onto here. These serrations are used for adjustments when you make your toe adjustments on wheel alignment.
Now we have the new inner tie rod. Tie rod comes with some glue.
Real important.
It's actually a thread locker. Help the part to keep it from becoming loose. Okay, so I have my Loctite for the threads. Spread a little on. Get it started. Here we go. Most of the way on. I'm going to snug it back with the tool. These are really tough to do without the proper tools.
Yeah.
And we just snug it down a little bit. Okay.
And there it is, it's on.
Next we put the bellows boot back on. This one I'm going to grease up a little bit. Grab some grease. This is just synthetic grease.
And we do want to point out here, this right here is an air port. It has a tube that goes, a metal tube that goes all the way over to the other bellows boot. So as this one compresses, air in here gets pushed out through this tube over to the other's bellows boot. If yours has this, make sure you line it back up with that tube right there. See the little tube there? Make sure it goes back on. Some have them, some don't. Make sure you put that back on right.
Right, nothing fancy. I'm going to use a tie strap to strap this bellows boot back on. The old clamp, the new inner tie rod does not come with the new clamp. So we're going to put a tie strap on here.
It's a very common method.
Slide her back on. A little tricky, kind of hidden.
There we go. So pop on there.
Oh, missed the tube that time.
Yep. Got to make sure you get that tube back on.
Okay, tube is seated. The air vent tube is back in place. All I have to do is tighten this tie strap, keep the bellows boot in its place. We'll put our clip back on. The bellows boot, there's a ridge, a little ridge, a notch. The tie rod the bellows boot has to be on the back side of that. It'll slide out to it.
Yep. Okay.
It'll keep it in place. Actually, put a lube on the threads a little bit. I can put my nut back on. Now, since I measured it, you can use anything to measure this with. I just want to get it close. Car still has to have a front end alignment after this, but I'll be pretty close. Tighten it back up to my mark. We're going to install the tie rod.
This is the outer tie rod. The old one.
Okay, I'm back to where I started. Reinsert it. Now, when I put this nut back on, there is a certain amount of torque. I'm going to apply some torque to this nut. Let me grab a...
Okay, this is the nut that goes on the tie rod here, and this is called a castle nut, the technical word for it. The reason why it's called a castle nut is it kind of looks like the top of castles, and it's got slots on it. And if you look right here, there's a little hole. I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but there's a little hole, and as this goes on and it tightens down, a cotter key goes through the hole and through the slot, and we'll show you that.
Okay, so we're going to tighten this down. I looked up the specifications for the nut. It says tighten it to 60 foot-pounds and then turn it until the slots are lined up to reinstall the cotter key. So I'm going to use a torque wrench. I'm going to tighten this to 60 foot-pounds. Okay, we got 60 foot-pounds. Then we look for the hole. Looks like I'm lined up just fine.
Yeah. See the hole?
Reinsert the cotter key. Give it a little bend. Okay.
And that's it.
That's one inner tie rod.
That's how you do a tie rod, and then just reinstall the wheel. Thank you for watching. See you.